Video lesson English Class 5. This is from Unit 1, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. The lesson is about comprehension. We'll be talking about certain difficult words as well. And we would be working on textbook Oxford Modern English, Book 5, page number 11, 12, 13 and 14. It will take us about 70 minutes to complete the task of the day. Get your notebooks, pencils, sharpeners and erasers ready so you do not have to run around during the lesson. Let's get started. By the end of today's lesson, we should be able to identify the main theme of the poem, recognize the rhyming pattern of the poem, infer meanings of the difficult words, read the poem with intonation and clarity, answer the given questions of comprehension accurately, and write imaginative paragraphs about the writer in the poem. So let's get started. Now before we start reading the poem, let's look at these two pictures. One is a snowy weather where you can't see anything, and the other is a foggy weather where it is very difficult to see the road. Now my question from you guys is, have you ever traveled during a foggy night or during the snowy weather? And how did it feel when you were driving or riding or walking through such a weather? I'm waiting. Yes, it must have been so scary, but at the same time, it is so magical and so wonderful. Now, before we actually start reading the poem, let's talk about the writer a little bit. Now, the writer of this poem was Robert Lee Frost. He was a very famous poet. He was born in San Francisco. He was a poet, a teacher, and also a farmer. He won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for his poetry. It's a very prestigious award for the literature, and it is given to only best of the best. He was famous for writing the poem The Road Not Taken. Why was he famous about it? You see, that poem has many meanings. So everybody took out their own meaning from the poem. So he became very famous because of that poem. Now, what I want you to do is look at the title of this poem and tell me what the poem might be about. Look at the title and look at the pictures that are there on this page number 11. Even on the video you can look at these pictures and guess what the poem is about. Now remember guys, your guess can be correct or incorrect. There is no compulsion that the guess has to be perfectly correct. So it can be right or it can be wrong. We will check when we read the poem whether your guesses were correct or not. Now before we actually start reading the poem, let's check some difficult words from the poem. So it becomes easy for us to understand the poem. Darkest evening. Yes, it's a winter evening, and which is very much darker than any summer evening. And it is even darker when a certain place is close to the North Pole. Downy. Downy means like down, or the soft under feathers of the young birds. Flake. It's a small piece of snow, like little pieces of the snow. Harness, the leather straps or belts that are used on a horse. Now look at this. This is the harness on the horse. Now let's read the poem silently. Have a look at the poem. Take a minute. Now let's watch this animation in which the reader is reading the poem, and it will tell you how poetry should be read to give its full effect and meaning.
Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep.
Now students, wasn't it just a beautiful poem? Now I want you to read the poem again and come up with a rhyming pattern of this poem. Take your time and see whether all the stanzas have the same rhyming pattern or not. Pause the video over here and figure out the rhyming pattern. Now that you have figured it out, let's check whether you are correct or not. In the very first stanza, what are the sounds that are rhyming? No, though and snow. These three are rhyming, and here is a different rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme of the first stanza is A, B and A. Good job. Now look at the second stanza. Queer, near and here. These three are the same ones, and they are exactly the same sound as B in the first stanza here. So the rhyming scheme of this stanza is B, B, C and B. Now lake again is a different sound. So let's check the third stanza. Shake rhymes with lake, so that rhyming scheme is C. Mistake is C as well. Now sweep is different and a totally different sound, so that comes under the heading of D, and then the last one comes in C. So the rhyming scheme of the third stanza is C, C, D and C. Now deep, keep, sleep and sleep. What are these? They are the same sound as D. So the rhyming scheme of the fourth stanza is D, D, D and D. So what does it mean? There are certain similarities between the rhyming scheme. Some sounds are repeated, but overall. Now let's look at this exercise on page number 11. Now the teacher will assign 1 or 2 questions to each one of you. You have to find the answer to the assigned question or questions. Now take 5 minutes to find out the answers. Now let's check whether you have found out the correct answers or not. Remember, you can only check the answers after finding the answers. You can make a mistake, but you cannot cheat. So moving ahead before doing the task is cheating. So let's check whether our answers are correct or not. To whom did the wits belong? Yes, they belong to a man who lived in the village. Did the writer see a farmhouse? No, there was no farmhouse inside. During which season or month do you think this event took place? Give a reason for your answer. This event took place in the winter season. How do we know this? Because the weather was so snowy and it was the darkest evening of the year. When is it the darkest? When it is the winter season. What mood or atmosphere does this poem create? Very mysterious, thoughtful, lonely. There is nobody in the woods and everything is quiet and mysterious. Nobody is around. Have you ever experienced the silence in the woods? So that is the mood that is created. Now the next three questions are mostly based on what you might also think. Why do you think the rider stopped by the woods? Maybe he wanted to get something from the woods. Maybe he wanted to rest for a while. That is all about what you think. Why was the horse puzzled? The horse was puzzled because there was no resting place nearby. There was no farmhouse, no shelter nearby. So he was puzzled. Why did the rider stop? Now, where do you think the rider was going? Now, that again is your answer. Where do you think he's going? Do you think he's going home? Do you think he's going to conduct some business? Now, that is totally up to you. You have to give me a reason for your answer as well. Now, let's check. What is the rhyming pattern in the poem? Do all the stanzas have the same rhyme? Yes. The rhyming pattern of the poem we have already discussed in the previous section. Now, answer the questions with reference to the context. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. Who is he, the poet, in speaking about here? Yes, it's the horse that is shaking his harness so that the rider would tell him where is he going. What is a harness? I told you, harness are the leather straps and belts used to control a horse. What is the possible mistake? Now you have to tell me what is the possible mistake. It could be that he is stopping in the woods for no reason, and maybe he has made the mistake that probably he has gotten lost. So many mistakes could be there, but that is something that you have to tell me with the logical reasoning. Now guys, let's talk about written work. On page number 12, exercise A, the questions are there that we were just discussing a little while ago. So I want you to answer these questions in your notebook neatly and carefully. Now take 10 to 15 minutes to complete this task. Best of luck. Now guys, let's do something a little bit interesting. I want you to take a moment and I want you to close your eyes. Take 5 minutes and imagine that there is a rider in the woods on a snowy evening. Where do you think he might be going? What work did he have? Who was he going to see? Did anything happen to him? Now quietly think about it. Close your eyes and after 5 minutes, make notes of all that you have imagined in a rough page. But give yourself time, close your eyes and imagine. Your teacher will ask your answers in a while. Now that you have discussed your imagination with your teacher, the task is that you have to write a paragraph or two about where the rider might have been going. And what work did he have and what was he going to see? Or did anything happen to him so that he ended up in the woods? Now take 20 minutes to write this composition. Remember, it can be 2 paragraphs or 1 paragraph. It is up to you. Take 20 minutes to do this task in your notebooks. Best of luck. Now let's talk about homework. First homework is that you have to do exercise A on page number 12. Now some of the questions from this exercise we have done in the class, and we have discussed all the questions in the class. So you have to do part number A till D in your copies or your notebooks. Now exercise C on page number 14 is the second homework. It's all about finding nouns and verbs, and we have done it a lot of times in our previous classes as well. So it is just something that is based on revision. So question number 2 you can do in your books, and question number 1 you can do in your notebooks. Homework 3. Oh well, this homework is very simple. All you gotta do is speak out these lines loud and clear and slowly. So best of luck with that. Now there is another homework on page number 13, exercise B. Now over here, this work needs to be done in your copies. I'll explain this homework to you even though we have done the concept of suffixes before as well. Now you know that suffix y can be used at many places, and it can convert a simple word into a adjective. So we have a word over here, fluff. If I add y to it, what would it become? Fluffy. In the same way, you can turn the rest of the words into adjectives. And now, after converting them into adjectives, what you have to do is you have to use them in the sentences of your own. Look at question number 2. Now here you have to find other suffixes that go with these words. Just like, for example, with red, you can add the suffix of ish and it can turn into reddish. Exactly in the way you have to complete the rest of the words as well. Now you may use the dictionary if you want to. Now the next question is about abbreviation. Abbreviations are short forms of something, like Bachelor of Arts is shortened by saying BA. In the same way, Master of Science is MSc. And His or Her Majesty is turned into HM. So in exactly the same way, you have to solve the rest of the question. Contractions is question number 4. Now contractions is especially easy work to do. I am, how do you convert it into a contracted form or short form? You just put an apostrophe and you omit the word a. Now I am became the contraction I am. In the same way, be will turn into haven't. So wherever you will omit the letter, you will put the apostrophe. Best of luck, guys. Submit your work according to the instructions of the teacher, according to the timetable she sets. Complete your work on time. Best of luck. Now before we sign off, let's wrap up the lesson. Which part of the lesson did you enjoy the most and why? Now that is totally up to you. And also describe the woods the writer stopped at on a snowy evening in your own words. Your teacher is waiting for your answers. Well done, guys. Have a great day. You have done a great job today. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson.